Hello there.
Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And today in Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I forgot about our little subtitle there. I am off today. But this is episode 3 of season 23 of Star Wars in the Galaxy. We are continuing with our romp through Star Wars Rebels season 3 with 3 episodes today: Imperial Supercommandos, Iron Squadron. And that's it, right, Jacob? Those are the 3 episodes: Imperial Supercommandos, Iron Squadron.
Okay, I see what you're doing. Put some respect on my man Hondo's name. We got a special one.
I have no problem with Hondo
Job.
And the Wynkahthu Job.
It's as Morrigan, isn't it?
It's real. I mean, sure, it's Morrigan.
It's just everything.
It's
just not your cup of tea. Not every season of Star Wars television, but quite a few seasons of Star Wars television we experienced a lot with the Bad Batch. Most of Star Wars anime television, I think, is extraordinary. I'm gonna have a lot of kind things to say about Imperial Supercommandos, and I like a lot of stuff with Iron Squadron, although I understand that episode's not everybody's cup of tea. But every so often, looking at you, Infested, looking at you... I remember Infested.
Yeah, looking at you, Infested, looking at you, Paths Unknown, looking at you, Idiots Array. Just don't do it.
Which one is Paths Unknown?
It's the one where Hunter and Wrecker go to the abandoned laboratory planet and find those clones just kind of chilling there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's the second episode of season 3.
There's some weird stuff happens in those later Bad Batch seasons. I always forget.
Yeah.
Kind of go off on some tangents. Yeah, and I think
And here's the thing.
What is the connecting theme here? Like, what is it about these ones that you're talking about?
They just don't do much. They just don't do much for me.
See, when you said Infested, I thought it was about like the bug thing, but this doesn't have bugs.
No. It's just about episodes that just like kind of are there. And just don't really add a whole lot to me, to the whole, and I think it's so stark for me because season 3 of Rebels is such an otherwise incredibly diverse and fascinating season of television that takes us to the far reaches of the galaxy and explores really a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's definitely like a sampling. It's a sampling platter.
It's really effective in its doing so. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Jacob, why don't you lead off with the summaries of Imperial Supercommandos, Iron Squadron, and the Wynkahthu Job?
With pleasure, Eli. With pleasure. In Imperial Supercommandos, excuse me, not commanders. Imperial Supercommandos.
You're doing this live from the bayou.
In Imperial Supercommandos, we open on Fenn Rau and Sabine playing a Mandalorian holographic game while discussing their mutual desires for the other one to join their side in the fight for survival in the galaxy. They take Fenn Rau to the war room where Sato tells the rebels that they've lost contact with the protectors on Conquered Dawn. They decide to send Ezra, Sabine, Chopper, and Fenn Rau, still a prisoner, to go investigate. While en route to Conquered Dawn, Fenn Rau overpowers Sabine and Ezra, and he knocks them both out. However, once they're on the surface, Sabine and Ezra and Chopper free themselves, and they find Rau mourning the destruction of the Protector's base and the death of many of the Protectors at the hands of what he says are other Mandalorians. We soon find out are Gar Saxon, the Imperial Viceroy of Mandalore, and the Imperial Supercommandos, who are Mandalorians who joined the Empire. They enter the base, and they take Ezra prisoner, but the 2 other Mandalorians are able to escape. Rau and Sabine bide their time outside of the base and make a plan to infiltrate the base to rescue Ezra, or that is after. At first, Rau does not want to join Sabine. He blames her and the rebels for the death of his men, saying that if he was there, he might have been able to prevent the surprise attack. But when they eavesdrop on the interrogation, where Ezra and Chopper are being interrogated by Gar Saxon, Rau hears Saxon say that he was planning on killing every single one of the protectors indiscriminately, and he realizes that in a weird twist of fate, being imprisoned by the rebels actually likely saved his life. So he agrees to join forces with Sabine. Sabine busts into the room where Ezra is being held prisoner and manages to free him. However, Fenn Rau makes off with the Phantom 2, leaving Sabine and Ezra in a standoff with Gar Saxon and the Commandos. Gar Saxon offers Sabine the choice to either submit and pledge loyalty to the Empire or die, but Sabine and Ezra manage to escape. They go on a high-octane jetpack chase through these tall canyons, but they end up once again surrounded and cut off by the Imperial Supercommandos. However, this time, Fenn Rau comes back in the Phantom 2 and rescues the kids and Chopper, taking them back to the Rebel fleet and agreeing to join the Rebels, telling Sabine that she has not forgotten Mandalore's ways and that she has earned his respect. In Iron Squadron, the Ghost crew arrives on Mikapo, a planet that is being taken over by the Empire, where a space battle is underway, with the Empire pursuing a freighter, a YT-2400 freighter by the name of Sato's Hammer, aka Iron Squadron, who manages to bomb the Imperial transport with cargo. While reporting in about this impressive victory to Commander Sato, the crew finds out that the leader of Iron Squadron, a boy named Mart, is actually Commander Sato's nephew. The crew boards the ship. They board Sato's Hammer, trying to convince the crew of Iron Squadron, who are made up of Mart as well as Goody and Jonar, and R3A3, and the trusty astromech, who, of course, Chopper wastes no time getting into a huge scuffle with. They try to convince the crew of the Iron Squadron to flee the system, to evacuate, and to join forces with the Phoenix Cell, with the Phoenix Cell. However, Mart and the other crew members really, really don't want to leave, saying that Mikapo's their home. They're not scared of the Empire. They're going to fight. They've been doing this for a while now, and there's no reason that they should retreat now. However, Admiral Constantine has been deployed by Thrawn to the system to deal with the insurgent ships, and Constantine's forces are able to disable Mart's engines. So while Ezra and Sabine do manage to escape with Goody and Jonar in the Phantom 2, the Ghost at this point had already left. Mart is left behind, surrounded by the Empire, but his ship is not destroyed because they think that the Empire is using it as bait in hopes the rebels will return. The rebels do decide to return. The Empire has also placed an ion mine, I believe, on the hull of the Sato's Hammer in hopes of destroying the rebel fleet when it returns. So, with this setup, the rebels do return. The Ghost does return, and R3 and Chopper jetpack their way onto the hull of Sato's Hammer to remove the ion mine and put it onto one of the cargo containers that's still aboard, or rather attached to Sato's Hammer. As the Ghost struggles to rescue Mart amidst the heavy laser fire from Constantine's Imperial light cruiser, but just then Commander Sato arrives with reinforcements. Just as they rescue Mart and his ship and destroy Constantine's light cruiser in the process, Thrawn's Star Destroyer drops out of hyperspace, and he exchanges a quick but sinister word with Commander Sato before they do escape. They do manage to escape, and back on Atollon, Mart has a lovely reunion with his Iron Squadron crew and also with his uncle Jun Sato. In the Wynkahthu Job, Ezra has teamed up once again with Hondo for another mission, another job, telling the Ghost crew to keep an open mind. And keep an open mind, they have to work very hard at in this episode, and so do I, because it is revealed that the new business partner, Hondo's new business partner, is none other than Azmorigan. That's right, he's back. I completely forgot that he was even a thing in season 3, that he even makes his way back yet again. But here we are, Hondo, Azmorigan, and the Ghost crew, and Hondo has what does appear to be a very enticing offer for the rebels. On the planet Wynkahthu, there is an abandoned Imperial freighter falling into Wynkahthu's lower atmosphere, trapped in a maelstrom, an atmospheric storm. And aboard it are proton bombs, which the rebels desperately need. And as Hondo says, precious metals, rare artifacts, riches untold, that sort of thing. The crew makes their way to Wynkahthu, and Zeb, Ezra, as Morgan, and Hondo and Chopper drop onto the abandoned freighter. Once on board, they run into one of Hondo's Ugnaught crew by the name of Melch. And the rebels realize that Hondo already tried to raid the ship. He failed and escaped while abandoning his crew, and Melch was the sole survivor. So they go through the ship, they find the treasure, they find the proton bombs. Zeb, Ezra, and Hondo start winching cargo out of the hold to the Ghost, but as Morgan goes missing and Zeb goes to find him, only to be ambushed and imprisoned by a Sentry Droid. So then Ezra and the others go and they free him, but now they're running around being chased through the ship by multiplying Sentry Droids. There's more of them that have been activated now that as Morgan makes the mistake of blasting the first one that overpowered Zeb. And they manage to make it back out as the ship descends further into the storm, losing its stabilizers. They're going down in a very dramatic end. We end up with Ezra and Zeb hanging off of the edge of the Ghost by the severed zip line. They manage to pull themselves back in with the proton bombs and some of the treasure secured, but back on the Ghost, much to as Morgan and Hondo Ohnaka's chagrin, they realized that the box of treasure that they had fought so hard for actually contained Melch, who had stowed away inside the box to ensure his own safe return.
All right, let's do this. 3 episodes, in my opinion, of steadily decreasing quality.
I sort of agree.
Yeah, but let's get to Imperial Supercommandos. We're back with an imprisoned Fenn Rau. For some reason, I thought that we had checked in with Rau between Protector of Concord Dawn in this episode, but no, we just have just kind of forgotten about Rau since they captured him basically about a season ago. Like, I think it was mid-season 2 that they captured him. So it's been about a season since we've checked in with him. They're playing this Cubicod game, which I had to look up. It's apparently from Legends, actually. I did not know that. But yeah, it's they're going to back to Concord Dawn or one of the moons of Concord Dawn, I believe it is, actually, because the Protectors haven't been checking in, and they're getting concerned about that. Hera sends Sabine and Ezra along with Rau to go investigate. She tells them, and try not to wreck the Phantom 2. We just got that thing, which I thought was a great line. Although, Hera, I don't know what you're talking about. You're entrusting this ship with the kids. Like, I'd say it's a coin flip as whether the ship gets back. Yeah. I don't know exactly what you exactly think is going to happen. Yeah, already we are reintroducing, of course, along with some work from the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians as an ancient warlike people whose main directive, and we'll get into a lot of this in 2029, 2030, when we finally get into the Mandalorian. The Mandalorians' main directive is to fight. If you drop a Mandalorian into any scenario, their first instinct will always be to fight. They'll fight the good governments, the bad governments, each other, doesn't matter as long as they're fighting. Yeah. Ezra kind of is a weird actor of like a stand-in for the audience in this episode, because he's just constantly bewildered by this whole thing. As he says right before they are stunned, I don't get this whole Mandalorian thing. Yeah. And I wrote in my notes, Ezra, there's a lot to get there. It's not just you. But we cut to the cold open of this episode where Rau sees an opportunity, and it's at this point that I'm like, why did you send 2 people along with this guy? I know one of them is an equal of his, and one of them is a Jedi Padawan, but you should have sent more than 2 people with this guy. What exactly did you think he was going to do? But yeah, no, Ezra and Sabine are compromised, and we cut.
Yeah, great open.
Yeah, great open.
I love the game that they're playing. They're playing this unfamiliar knife cube game that Fenn Rau mentions. They play it back on Mandalore, and that kind of metaphorically that really shows us where this episode is going in terms of the character development and the character work that it does, where this is really already, with this first conversation, we're deepening our impression of who Sabine is, where she comes from. Same thing with Fenn Rau. Like you said, we're reintroducing the Mandalorians as a force that are going to become more and more important throughout season 3, and especially season 4. So on the rewatch, especially, honestly, I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And this begins, actually, I'm just realizing this isn't even my notes I'm drawing upon, but I did realize that this episode, and we're going to see a bunch of episodes like this, especially with relation to the Mandalorian subplots of this show, although we do see, I have at least 2 examples in my head of episodes that are not about Mandalorian subplots in which this dynamic is kind of happens, where the Ghost crew are Forrest Gumping their way through the galaxy. There are these major plot lines that are happening in the galaxy, and the Ghost crew, I don't want to say they're just along for the ride, because they do have important parts to play in those episodes.
Yeah.
This episode, Imperial Supercommandos, is a great example. Secret Cargo later this season is a great example. My favorite episode of Rebels, Twin Suns, I think is the primary example of this dynamic. I would also argue that the season 4 premiere, Heroes of Mandalore, is also part of this dynamic, where there are all these other different subplots going on in the galaxy with other established characters, sometimes new. This is a weird episode because it's about new characters. Rau is a character introduced for the show, and Gar Saxon, although he was introduced in the comics originally, which would have been in the Clone Wars, this is his technical first appearance in a Star Wars television show. But in subsequent episodes, this will be about pre-existing characters: Mon Mothma, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Bo-Katan Kryze. It'll be about these established characters continuing their stories. And oh yeah, also the Rebels crew are here to help them through that, because remember what show we're in. And I just find that fascinating. And actually, it's surprising. I actually think that doesn't hurt the episodes. I think mostly because the Ghost crew still find a way to play their roles importantly. And I think it's, for me, because the stories, like, we already have a preformed connection as Star Wars fans to those pre-existing stories, to the story of, I'll give Secret Cargo an example, to the story of Mon Mothma and the creation of the rebellion. That, like, yeah, we can deal with the Ghost crew being in the background a little bit more, because the story around how the rebellion, the capital R, capital A Rebel Alliance was created is so intrinsically fascinating.
Yeah.
That if the Ghost crew gets sidelined a little bit for an episode, so be it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think this is one of those episodes where we kind of get to see another piece of the puzzle, but without compromising what Rebels really excels at, which is giving us this sort of nonstop intimate portrait of who these people are and why they're making the choices in life that they
But let's be clear, like, for example, the main character of this episode is Fenn Rau. It's not.
It feels split between Sabine and Fenn for me. I wouldn't say like Fenn Rau really becomes,
to me at least, I guess.
Focus. Like, he's one of the focus, for sure.
Yeah.
But I really feel like this is a duo.
The focus of this episode is Fenn Rau.
But I mean, in many ways, it is. Yeah. So tell me about Fenn Rau then. What do you think about his development? How he's here? How he starts?
I think this is a critical episode for Fenn Rau. I think this is a great episode for him as he realizes how warped his ideas of, and this is not like an indictment of Fenn Rau. Fenn Rau, in many ways, I believe, in the Clone Wars, was an honorable man whose honor and whose concepts of honor and respect got warped, like many did, by the development of the Galactic Empire. And by what the Galactic Empire shaped the times into. We get the impetus of this as they're scavenging the remains of the Protector's base, where he says, "Don't talk to me about your people. What do you know of loyalty?" Kevin McKidd's indignant delivery of this line is incredible. And we're going to, and in this episode is going to flip that question back on Fenn Rau he asks Sabine what she knows of loyalty. But really, this question, the main question of this episode is, what does he know of loyalty? What does loyalty mean to him? What does honor mean to him? Because it takes these compounding two events, the decimation of the protectors, of everything he had sworn his life to for the past however many years in this current state. I'm not talking like he'd been with the protectors for longer than the Empire had been around, but this specific purpose. It takes the combination of that and then encountering Saxon and the Imperial Supercommandos to fully make him reevaluate what those concepts mean to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, in some ways, a classic, almost, story under evil regimes, under authoritarianism, when, you know, it can be difficult for people to accept that the values that they thought they had in place and that they thought they were fighting for are no longer there. And that's sort of what Fenn Rau has to come around to, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right.
And also it's about, I think in many ways, though, he is also aware of the Empire, the threat it poses, the evil, but he says, like, I'm a survivalist. Mandalore has been through so many wars, destruction. We need to survive.
In a weird reference, there's we can go back to Luke at the beginning of A New Hope. I don't love the Empire. I mean, I hate it, but there's not much I can do about it right now. That is Fenn Rau's attitude towards things right now. He has no love for the Empire, but what he does have love for is the protectors, and most importantly, his need to survive. He needs to survive like everybody else, so he cuts the deal that he thinks will help him survive the most. But it is now, in this episode, him figuring out that that's just not good enough. That fighting back is actually a sustainable way of doing this, and that those who fight back actually do have the honor that he felt that working with the Empire was helping him to sustain, but which in fact, of course, was not a true. It was a perverted code of honor. The Empire was perverting the Protector's honor for their own purposes. And that's one of the main things he realizes in this episode, mostly in the form of the Imperial Supercommandos.
Well said. Yeah, well said. So Rau, he still feels this way because he overpowers Sabine and Ezra. And I love how Sabine, as soon as Ezra comes up to the cockpit and starts talking to her, it's like she already knows. It's almost disappointment as much as a warning, the tone of her voice, when she says, "Ezra, watch him." And then he just turns around and they both just he gets clobbered, she gets stunned. Next thing you know, Chopper's pinching his nose saying, bro, wake up. But then, of course, I mean, I feel like
before you get to something, I want to make a very small point, which is, I don't know if I don't think I'm ever going to be great at understanding what Chopper's directly saying in some circumstances, but I feel like I'm getting better at it as this show proceeds. When Ezra asks if they landed on Concord Dawn, I don't think Chopper said, "What do you think, dumbass?" But I definitely heard that. Like
maybe a little bit, yeah. Maybe a little bit.
The exchange I heard was, "Wait, Chopper, have we landed? What do you think, dumbass?" Which, again, it's a kid's show. He can't say that. But, did he not say that? I love Chopper.
I think Chopper probably has a very dirty mouth. He's probably...
Oh, yeah, no, I don't doubt it.
He's probably saying all kinds of things.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, no. R-rated Star Wars Rebels win.
I mean, immediately after that, I feel like we see a different side of Rau as soon as he's standing there, he's coming back from being imprisoned, and he's seen his entire base, effectively his family, his community, his comrades. They were ambushed, they were shot down. When Ezra pulls the blaster right out of his hand, like he is,
and he just lets him. He doesn't try to hold on.
He is that to me. I mean, for a guy where we saw he's sitting across from Ezra. Ezra, kind of smiles at him. Ezra kind of doing what Ezra does and kind of waffling around, be like, so being classic teenage Ezra.
Ezra being Ezra, yeah.
Fenn Rau just absolutely unmoved by it, right? Like absolutely unmoved. And then to see him all of a sudden, like we see him, all of a sudden he's brought so low, and we see him so vulnerable and so devastated. I think that is such an important beat for the episode, not only for him to realize that, like, no matter what he tries to do, like the Empire is going to come for you eventually. He's been put in a situation where he can no longer try and walk the tightrope down the middle and stay out. And this is what convinces him. This is also what makes him, to me, a more compelling character, because he's not just this like cold, angry warrior dude. Like all of a sudden he is a mourner, and he is someone who has undergone loss, similar to what the rebels do. And that's almost what initiates him, both as a matter of plot and also emotionally. That like prepares him and initiates him to kind of join the rebels, who've all undergone similar losses. That's driven them to find new purpose and find new belonging. So that's the moment that stands out to me in this episode. I think about that one a lot.
Even comparing, I can't believe I'm comparing Fenn Rau to Luke Skywalker so much. It is his burning homestead moment. It is, there's nothing left for me here now. I want to go with you and become a Jedi like my father before me. Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but it just occurred to me that at the same time, this is not the homestead moment, because he might all of a sudden he might realize how he feels about the Empire. That might be the moment when he says, all right, in the almost words of Marva Andor, he might realize that his opinion really now is fuck the Empire. But he doesn't want to team up with the rebels. He doesn't want to team up with the scene. He still blames her. He says, I have no intention of leaving here. It's a little bit almost, I don't know if I want to say like suicidal, but it seems like he is just ready and willing to die there, seeking his revenge, knowing that there's like nothing left for him of what he thought. And it's sort of up
the
to
difference
Sabine.
Between. I was just gonna say the difference between Luke and Fenn Rau in this is that they're coming to this moment with complete opposite outlooks. Luke's is it's the losing of naivete, where Fenn Rau is actually, I feel like, the temporary, although he'll cast it off later this episode, reinforcement of cynicism. Luke is, well, I can't really do anything about the Empire. It's so big and so out there, and I'm just I'm trying to find my way in the world, and I don't know what that means yet. Rau is, I've found my way in the world. The Empire is too big. They've crushed us all. There's nothing we can do about it. And this just reinforces, oh no, there's nothing to do about it. To have a more glib version of that meme, guess I'll die. Yeah, no, there's so much going on with that moment that I didn't even register upon the first time watching this. But yeah, no, there is a, but the subsequent however many minutes, I think it's probably like 15 or so, are going to completely change Rau's perspective on all of this. Once he finds those who have completely given into their cynicism, perverted, as I've said before, the Mandalorian code, harder than he and the Protectors had. The Protectors, at least they were mercenaries for the Empire, and they were really allowed to do their own thing. No. These guys, we'll talk about them soon, are using the facade, using the appearance of Mandalorian culture.
Yeah.
To do the Empire's bidding. Yeah. Like they're Mandalorian Imperials. They're not Imperial Mandalorians.
Yeah, like it's sort of what, like
the
how
Imperial,
you said earlier.
At the end of the day, comes first.
They've taken the cultural idea, the aesthetics, and the idea in the vacuum of what it means to be a Mandalorian warrior, and they've used that to sort of create Mandalorian loyalty and support for the Empire.
It comes back, ironically enough, it comes back to a major theme of the season, which I didn't realize exactly how major this is going to be, of knowledge versus understanding. Dexter Jetster in Attack of the Clones. I should think Jedi should have respect for the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The conclusion that one version of the conclusion that Fenn Rau comes to at the end of this episode is that Gar Saxon and Imperial Supercommandos know all about being a Mandalorian, but he understands it. They have the aesthetic, they have the design, but he has the heart, and Sabine has the heart. You know,
it's sort of that question of authenticity,
empathy, and knowledge of what being a Mandalorian.
It seems like the Mandalorians, or Sabine and Fenn Rau, are still being Mandalorian on their own terms, whereas the Supercommandos, they are in a sense Mandalorian, but that identity has also been co-opted in a sense by the Empire for its own purpose, and like they glom onto that regardless because it benefits them in terms of power and status on Mandalore, stability. But I think ultimately there's a reason why we don't, and ultimately later on in the season or in the series, season 4, we see that the Super Commandos don't really have the cachet, the loyalty that they kind of claim to have.
Yeah, and we'll get, as you said, in future seasons as well as later this season, we will get into all of that and what that means for them. But I think for now, we should get on to some new arrivals to Concord Dawn that will, of course, ultimately shape this episode and what happens to Ezra, Sabine, and Fenn Rau. Do you want to get on to the title of this episode?
That's right. It's the Imperial Supercommandos. They appear on the horizon, riding in their shiny all-white armor with their sleek, upgraded jetpacks.
And I will say, as much as I just trashed the hell out of them, I will just say, I love that design. I love the Imperial Supercommandos design. I think it looks so cool.
I'm not moved by the design personally. I don't find it doesn't, I think very purposefully, it seems to not really hew to the same aesthetic cues and design language that a lot of the Mandalorian armor does. Like, it loses a lot of the chunky angularity. It loses obviously a lot of the sort of the individuality of the armor, the carbon scoring, the scratches, the chips, the blast marks, the custom paint jobs, the colors, the colorfulness of it all in both shape and color. I feel like it's an imperialized, it's almost like you said, it almost strikes me more as like they look almost like if you line them up next to like a bunch of types of stormtrooper armor and a bunch of Mandalorians armor, they look closer to it's almost more like a Mandalorianized stormtrooper kind of design rather than a true Mandalorian armor. And I think that is a very that's a fun, clever way of the art direction and the design of this show kind of telling us something about who these dudes are. I will say that.
And you're exactly right. And that's exactly like I think you and I were viewing it through the opposite lenses. Is that you were dissatisfied with them because, and I'm not trying to fault you on this, you were viewing them as Mandalorian armor. I think they're cool because I think they're one of the coolest Stormtrooper designs we've ever gotten.
Fair enough, yeah.
I view them as Stormtrooper armor.
Yeah. And then I guess we agree. My point was rather just like, I'm like, yeah, like I don't really think they look that cool. But that's a matter of taste. But regardless, I think this is the design of this armor is very, very good. Like in terms of design, in terms of art direction. It's very well placed. It's very well done.
Of the combination of the Imperial and Mandalorian aesthetic, yeah. But enough about the Imperial Supercommandos themselves. I want to talk about their leader. The biggest thing that changed with me, I think that one of the biggest things that's changed with me with this rewatch of the show, I was pretty neutral about this character, I'm going to say. I think mostly because it felt off. It always felt a little weird to me, specifically with this character. Yeah. Because he was introduced in a comic series that was supposed to be an arc of the Clone Wars, but then wasn't. But then he kind of got dropped into Rebels, like we were all supposed to know who he was. And it makes sense because you were not supposed to know who he was because he was supposed to be part of the Clone Wars, but then he wasn't. It's this weird dynamic of stuff. But anyway.
Yeah.
Removing all that context away from this character, I just want to say I really like Gar Saxon as a character. And I really love especially the portrayal of him by one of the most important actors, in my opinion, since Disney's acquisition of Star Wars. And that is Mr. Ray Stevenson. Rest in peace, good sir. Ray Stevenson played Gar Saxon in this season of Star Wars Rebels, which I believe is actually only 2 episodes of this show. But he was rehired by Lucasfilm to play one of the best acted characters in a Star Wars TV show, in my opinion. And that's saying in a Star Wars live action TV show, in my opinion. And that's saying something because Star Wars television has given us a wealth of incredible live action television has given us a wealth of incredible performances, from Moses Ingram as Reva Savander in Obi-Wan Kenobi to Jodie Turner-Smith as Mother Anastasia in The Acolyte to Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rael in Andor. But then we get to Baylan Skoll, wonderfully acted by Ray Stevenson in Ahsoka. And I think this is one of my ways. I want to use a little bit of this time to recognize Ray Stevenson because we'll get to Ahsoka in like 2035 on In a Galaxy.
Yeah, fair enough.
What a talent. I'm so sad that we know he's been recast in Ahsoka Season 2 after his death by Rory McCann, who many Game of Thrones fans have talked about incredibly positively with his role as the Hound in Game of Thrones.
So he's quite.
And I no doubt McCann will do a great job as Baylan Skoll, but I think.
Yeah. Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think it'll be great, but I think that Ray Stevenson just brought such a really fascinating energy to that character, Baylan Skoll, in a series that was already packed with characters we cared about so deeply: Ahsoka Tano, Hera Syndulla, Sabine Wren, Grand Admiral Thrawn. But Baylan held his own among all of them, characters we'd spent seasons and seasons and seasons of television with.
He'll be missed.
But, yeah, he will be. And although I think Baylan is his better role, I don't want to discount him as Gar Saxon, because I think it's great. I think he does a great job here, and I think he does a much better job than I remembered. Not to say that I thought he was bad in this role. I just when I thought of Ray Stevenson, my mind would always jump post Ahsoka to Baylan, and I think it still will. But my point is, there's so many great line deliveries here. But like, what I think is really interesting about Gar Saxon, to jump a little bit ahead, I compared him to another Imperial character in a pretty similar position that he is in. I think that Gar Saxon and Orson Krennic have a lot in common.
How so?
They're both big fish in small ponds.
What do you mean by that?
They both wield an incredible amount of power and dominance in their own spheres, with Gar Saxon being in the sphere of Mandalore and in the sphere of where Mandalore and the Empire overlap. He is one of the big people in that realm. Orson Krennic is in where the Empire and its efforts in science overlap. They're both the big dogs in that arena. But the minute that you put them in contact with a superior, Tarkin for Krennic, I believe that it gets revealed that Gar Saxon is a position within the Empire that originated legends, but now it's been brought to canon, called the Emperor's Hand. If you put Gar Saxon in a room with Darth Vader, or even Thrawn, or of course the Emperor, yes, sir, it will be done, sir. Yes, I live to serve your will, sir. And I think what that does is create such an inferiority complex, because they know they have to do that. They know they have to grovel, which makes them even more aggressive and domineering in their arenas, because they have to enforce what power they have with both of them's characters. And I think that there's such a display of that here with Saxon, where it's just where his inferiority complex in that way is only fueling him to be more aggressive and more standoffish and more just domineering in this arena. I will also...
Gar's kind of a bully.
Yeah, he is a bully. And the idea of hurt people, like, again, because he is always talked down to and spat upon by your higher ups, your Vaders, your Emperors, your Thrawns, he feels like he has to take it out harder on those he considers beneath him.
Definitely, yeah.
I also just want to mention just a quick Easter egg little thing. We've already talked about this when Rau was brought in, but the fact that the two main best friend characters of HBO's Rome, played by Kevin McKidd and Ray Stevenson, are now arch enemies in the Mandalorian Society and Rebels is very funny.
I love it. Yeah.
And it's a very cool detail, given a lot of the parallels between Roman and Mandalorian society. Yeah, I've been talking for a while. What do you got to say about our man Gar Saxon here?
I don't know. I find him compelling. I think in universe, I think he's a little annoying, a little lame. Like he knows in a sense he kind of
hold on,
installed or propped up by the Empire. His brother.
Yeah. You know, remember his brother?
Remind me of his brother. When do we name him in Rebels?
Tiber.
Oh, yeah.
His name is Tiber Saxon, voiced by Tobias Menzies, also from HBO's Realm. Season 4, Heroes of Mandalore.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of a blip on the radar compared to Gar, but I do remember him now that you...
He is... Tiber Saxon is what if Gar Saxon had a Gar Saxon?
Yeah.
What if that inferiority conflict included having a brother who is better at you than everything you were, like, who is a better version of you?
Well, I will say this about Gar Saxon. During the interrogation of Ezra, I know I said what I said about Gar, but that line, every lie you tell holds a shred of truth. You're giving me what I want, whether you realize it or not. That's nice. I like that.
It's great. Again, he knows how to wield his power when he is in an arena where he's allowed to.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. But I want to get on to Rau having his change of heart with Sabine, because I feel like that's sort of the fulcrum of the episode. No pun intended.
Well, partially at least. He still flies away, but then he'll have his full Deus Ex Raukina, I think I called it.
Nice.
Later in the episode, yeah, thanks. But yeah, he said, I wrote down in this, Gar Saxon wanted to be our ruler, but he had no honor. And Sabine responds, that's why the Empire put him in charge.
Because he would do what they wanted.
Because he would do what they wanted, and with him, and the whole idea of like, I forget who it was. I think this might have been from Harry Potter or something like that. I think it might have been when Sirius and Remus were analyzing Peter Pettigrew, where they were talking about him like always wanting to cozy up to the biggest bully in the room, which is exactly what who Gar Saxon is as well. Because of course, even before the Empire, even before he had Palpatine and Thrawn and Vader and all those people to cozy up to, who was he doing with? Who is he doing it with? He was doing it with Maul, who broke him out of the Spire on Stygian Prime. That was Gar Saxon.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He was part of the. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
And of course, like. Yeah, and yeah, I read my notes. Sabine is framing this about honor and trying to explain to Rau that the Empire fights without honor. It's kind of their thing. The rebellion is, of course, far from perfect, but they fight with honor as much as they possibly can, and more importantly, they fight for the right reasons. I think there is also like a dismissal of Rau, which I think is part of his animosity towards the rebellion in season 2, of like, well, they can't really pull this off. We saw Kalani in the last battle talking about that as well. They can't possibly win this. But what if they try? The question is, of course, but what if they try? Which is so important to the development of Rau as a character. Yeah, anything you want to say generally about Rau starting to wake up?
I mean, yeah, I think he's starting to come around.
Yeah, no, I think he is. Where do you want to go next?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, it was Sabine. Okay, sorry, continue.
No, go ahead.
Obviously, we have Sabine rushing the base, managing to free Ezra. Rau goes off by himself. But the standoff with Saxon is interesting because all of a sudden we have more. We start to put some of the pieces together about Sabine's mother, her family, the Ren clan.
I also know that your mother is looking for you. Your cowardice shamed your family's name and standing.
I heard that one before.
To which I wrote in my notes, would I take an entire animated or live action season just about the politics of Mandalorian society? Yes, I would. I know we got quite a bit of it in seasons 1 and 3 of The Mandalorian, but there was so much else going on in that show. I'd love to get a show fully dedicated to Mandalorian politics and only Mandalorian politics. I think it's fascinating. But yeah, no, we learn that as you brought up, the family ain't happy. Sabine screwed her family back on Mandalore by doing what she did. I'm not saying she shouldn't have done. I'm saying it has consequences, and of course Sabine knew it would have consequences when she did it.
Yeah.
It's striking, and of course we're going to. This is not only just an interesting lore detail. This is building to a subplot that this season is going to approach about mid-season with those 2 episodes, Trials of the Darksaber, Legacy of Mandalore. We're going to start seeing the implications of what Gar Saxon is telling Sabine, which is true. It's manipulative, but it also happens to be true as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Sabine pulls and then freaking Saxon says, like, had you played your cards right, it could have been you wearing this armor. To which Sabine says, sorry, Saxon, I like a little more color. But which to me is all about the theme we've talked about many times on this show of the stripping of individuality, God damn it, under fascism. Saxon gets some red on his armor as a rank identifier, but his lieutenants get no distinction.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly fitting.
That's sort of a complete that just effaces kind of the Mandalorian culture and the meaning of the armor,
Yeah.
That's intentional.
And the meaning of the people behind them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but they have them surrounded. Sabine does her little fake out. I swear that you're a fool. Chopper now. Which is both very funny, but also incredibly I always love when Star Wars gets creative like this. It's one of the first things that drew me to The Mandalorian as a show. When we got that first scene in that first episode of Mando closing the door to slice that poor Quarren in half. I just thought that was an incredibly like creative use of Star Wars technology to do some stuff like that. But here's another one using the feedback of the helmet as a distraction while Ezra and Sabine jet away. And I'll also just add as a quick aside, I find it's really interesting as a subversion of a lot of what's been going on or went on early in season 1 with Sabine and Ezra kind of flirting and stuff like that, where like Sabine wraps her arms around Ezra and we're like, what the fuck is happening? And of course it's a subversion. There's nothing like romantic or anything about it. She's just grabbing onto him so they can get away, which I found was a really great subversion of like a romantic sort of trope.
Yeah.
Not romantic trope necessarily, just like an expectation that may have been put on.
I loved it. It was so funny that when that came out, that was the moment when every Ezra Sabine shipper was like, oh my god, there it is. Like they knew what they were doing when they put that little extra shot in there for sure. They made it pan out like that.
Yeah.
And then you end up with Ezra doing something way cooler, surfing on top of Chopper while Chopper's using his rocket booster, which is just, I mean, come on. While deflecting blasters with the lightsaber, that's so badass, bro.
I think, like, and who knows, maybe it is just the jetpacks. Honestly, that's a better explanation than, that's the best explanation I could personally come up with. But even compared to a lot of the action sequences that we got at the beginning of this season in Steps into Shadow, like, I just found myself way more engaged with this action sequence. It was fun, it was fast, it was intense. Like, there was just a lot more going on. I think the jetpacks offer that dynamicness. Yeah. I just found it way more engaging. Yeah, I just want to say. But yeah, I said in my notes, it's fast and dangerous and fun, which I stand by.
Definitely.
I will also just say before we get to the end, even when I was feeling more neutral about Gar Saxon, I always loved, and it didn't disappoint this time, the in my mind iconic delivery of when he comes back with the in the Phantom 2, the infamous, again in my mind, Ray Stevenson delivery of Rau.
Oh yeah, that's one of the moments that I remember that from watching this. This is an episode that I think I've really rewatched that much, but that was the moment I was like, he's gonna shout Rau. Get ready, it's gonna happen.
He's gonna do it. I thought it was gonna be way earlier in the episode, but no, it was right here. Rau. the utter annoyance in his voice, like, oh, it's this fucking guy. Of course, it had to be this fucking guy. Is fantastic. Yeah, but as Fenn Rau says at the very end, I was about to turn my backs on you guys. Then I realized you were willing to die for your people, even though they are not Mandalorian. At the end of the day, I wrote in my notes, it's honor that convinces Fenn Rau on the rebels. Yeah. I forgot that Sabine directly fought Saxon once before that duel that we get between them in Legacy of Mandalore. But I think and although it's not to me as iconic as that duel on the ice with Sabine using Ezra's lightsaber and Gar Saxon using Darksaber, there is something incredibly iconic of them fighting in the wreckage of the Protector's ship. I think there's something really cool about that. Like, the imagery is so evocative.
Absolutely, yeah.
Almost like they're fighting in the wreckages of Mandalorian society. Heyo.
I think it's a great way to end for Rau to come around and say, you know what, I recognize your journey and your values as a Mandalorian have not been entirely the same as mine, but regardless, I respect you and I recognize you for who you are. I think that's after the tragedy that Rau
an acknowledgement that his were wrong, and an acknowledgement that his values, I'm not sure how willing.
I mean, I don't think his values were necessarily.
I'm not necessarily wrong. He just kind of, he had just kind of been led astray. Like, his heart was in the right place, but what he was doing was not working. Yeah.
I mean, he just fell into that trap of being like, if I can keep myself safe, then that's enough.
Yeah, and then that'll keep everybody else safe. And
yeah,
that just
in reality,
as he saw.
Yeah, the evil doesn't stop. It's not going to stop at your doorstep. It's going to come in your house, and it came to his house.
Yeah, and And of course, he saw that because of the rebels, it came into his house, and he was just lucky enough not to be there when it did.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, no, they're powerful stuff. Yeah. Overall thoughts on this episode?
Overall, it's a pretty strong episode. I think visually it's gorgeous. The Conqueror Dawn backdrop is unbelievable. It's some
great.
Yeah, it gives us some exciting new developments. Obviously, Fenn Rau's story is just beginning. The story of Mandalore, Rebels starts to unpack that in its own way. The Protectors, Sabine's family after the fall of the Republic in more depth, like almost kind of a standard episode for this season, which maybe just goes to show how strong this series has become at this point.
And it has. It really has. It's become exceptionally strong in season 3. Every season to me is just a ramp up in quality. Maybe not as much from 3 to 4, but that just goes to show what heights it had already reached by the time you got to season 3. So like how much further up was there to go? But yeah, do you want to get on? I love this episode. I think it was great. Yeah. I think there was a lot of great stuff. The performances of Kevin McKidd and especially Ray Stevenson elevated this episode to me to just another level. I think it was. I think those two performances really just elevated the episode. I love the stealth stuff. I love the sneaking around. I've already talked about the designs of the Imperial Supercommandos. Really strong themes this episode. Just a really great episode of a really good episode of the season. I wouldn't say like top 2 or 3 episodes of the season, but it's up there. Yeah, let's get to Iron Squadron. Where do you want to start with Iron Squadron?
Gosh, well, I mean, I think we have to start with the man of the hour, the boy, the young teenager of the hour, Mart. Kind of sets everything. Martin Matten, who sets everything in motion. Sato's nephew. Sato has.
We'll find out later in the episode. Yeah, but
pretty early on in the episode. But yeah, I mean, I think
after the cold open. Yeah, but yeah,
it's a pretty exciting opening. I mean, I think it's Ezra's sort of surprise and almost amazement that the Empire was sent retreating is something that sticks in my mind as
yeah, we see this punk rebel crew, this very like stick it to the man and take out the Empire their own ways and all that kind of stuff, which is really interesting that it is presented, and I think this is of course very intentional, that it is presented as, oh, these guys are doing what nobody else would do against the Empire. Specifically, of course, that the trick with the cargo and all that kind of stuff. And of course, later in the episode, we learn that's their only trick. They're a one-trick pony, or at least that we've seen. They don't know a ton about the argument I'll make for this episode, and what I've discovered upon watching this in my notes is that the Iron Squadron is a reflection of the Ghost crew and how far they have come, and why their approach, especially now to fighting the Empire, is so important and most important and furthermore effective. We'll see how green and inexperienced the Iron Squadron crew is, and why it is they need the rebellion. And sure, you could make an argument that the rebellion needs them, but and you will see specifically Mart will become somewhat of a recurring character in this show, and we will see like how he develops over time. But really, why this episode is a reinforcement of kind of Kanan's arc in season 2 of the thing he says to Hera at the beginning of Siege of Lothal of, when we started this thing, it was rob from the Empire, give to the needy. Now we're involved with some sort of military thing. And why being involved in some sort of military thing and operating with the tactics of that aforementioned military thing is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they see the YT-2400, which of course many fans know as the Outrider - Rendar ship in Shadows of the Empire.
I love that they made this one canon.
I mean, technically it was canon because of that very slight appearance in the background of A New Hope, but like, I understand what you mean.
It's confirmed now, beyond the shadow of a doubt.
And we see the hot shots, we see what they're doing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, anything else to say about the cold open before we dive into who the Iron Squadron is and what they're about?
No, let's do it.
All right. So yeah, they bombed the Imperial cruiser with cargo, blah, blah, blah. We already covered that. Zeb quickly describes the Iron Squadron, the Sato's hammer, as sounds like a ship full of Ezras, which he's not incredibly wrong about. Speaking of that point, it is very important to me that it is Ezra who wants the Ghost crew to take a chance on them. Like, who is the most enthusiastic of the direct Ghost crew of taking a chance on these guys? Because I do think Ezra sees a lot of himself in them. I think that Ezra sees, like, it's an important part of this episode of Ezra, and kind of because of that, the audience sees how much potential these guys have in them and knows they can do better. That's, to me, the overarching theme of the episode is Ezra's knowledge that these people can do better and can be useful to the rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, as you said, we find out that the commander of the Iron Squadron is Jun Sato's nephew, which of course makes it personal. It's not just these like barely above teenagers that we're helping. They're directly related to not only Commander Sato, but Commander Sato's legacy. As we hear, the Iron Squadron was his brother's squadron, and so it is not just about him. It is about honoring the legacy of his brother and in his nephew, in Mart Matin. Yeah, do you have anything to say before we get on to Sato's hammer specifically?
I think we should go for it.
We get on to Sato's hammer, and we meet the Iron Squadron crew, who, of course, all have delightfully Tuckerized names. Are you aware of the Tuckerized nature of all these names?
What do you mean by that?
So, Mart Matin, that's an interesting name, don't you think? Right?
Yeah.
Mart Matin is named after... Mart Matin is a Tuckerization of Matt Martin.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Who is, of course, a Lucasfilm senior creative executive and member of the Lucasfilm Story Group. John Jin is named after John Harper, a producer and cameraman on the YouTube series The Star Wars Show, Rip the Star Wars Show. That was a great show, hosted by Anthony Carboni, and another member of the Lucasfilm media team. Of the three, I imagine you recognize Gutierrez's name.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Gutierrez, of course.
Andy Gutierrez, of course, the host of the co-host of the Star Wars Show, along with Anthony Carboni and previously Peter Townley. And of course, the host of Rebels Recon, the recap show that was posted on the Star Wars YouTube channel after every episode of Star Wars Rebels would release, which I was a weekly listener of. I loved Rebels Recon. It was a great show. And Gutierrez always asked such great questions of a lot of folks, including Pablo Hidalgo. I'm sure Matt Martin was on there. I know who else was on there. I know Killian Plunkett, who was one of the concept designers, often made appearances. Henry Gilroy often was interviewed on that show. I believe Dave made an appearance or two. But yeah, Rebels Recon was great. Yeah. So I think it's important to note those three characters and the inspirations for those characters. Gutierrez, Matt Martin, Matin, as I apparently confused the name yet again, and John Jin. Yeah, Jacob, it looks like the Sato's hammer has seen better days, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's in disrepair, as you might expect from a living space, and also a complex machine that's being, taken care of by a bunch of pretty irresponsible teenagers. It seems like.
Yeah, no, they're not doing so great, and yet they seem to have the impression that they can boss around the Ghost Crew, who is the cooler Daniel version of the Iron Squadron. I'm sorry, they just are. Yeah, immediately, as Jacob said in our summary, Chopper immediately gets into a fight with R3A3, which is incredibly hilarious. But yeah, Hera goes on with, I believe it's who goes on? It's Hera, Ezra, and Sabine, right?
Yeah.
And Hera says we've been sent to evacuate you, and Johnner has no idea what the word evacuate means.
I think he's being a little bit facetious. Is being sarcastic.
Maybe, but he's saying,
we don't want to. He's saying we're not fucking leaving. That's sort of his whole point.
I would agree with you if Mark doesn't immediately explain it afterwards.
Oh.
He says, what does evacuate mean? It means run away like a coward.
Oh, well, again, that's his commentary.
Mark's commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But anyway.
That's not like a real... Anyways.
My point being, they just want to, it is all about as Indiana Jones would say, it's all about the fortune and glory. Not the fortune, but the glory. For fortune and glory, see next episode. But yeah, they think they need to fight the Empire at any cost, which means doing anything to win, no matter how dangerous. As I wrote in my notes, the rebels always have detailed plans, and sure, maybe they improvise quite a bit, but they have strategy, they have experience, and they have patience. Things the Iron Squadron could absolutely use some lessons in. I'll throw it to you. What is your first impression? What was your first impression, generally speaking, of the Iron Squadron, of the crew aboard the Sato's Hammer? It's always confusing because they're called the Iron Squadron, but their ship is called the Sato's Hammer. It's complicated. Anyway, your thoughts?
Who are these kids? Why are they so cavalier? Like my first impression is just, what in the world must have happened to Mark Matten to get him to have this near suicidal level of just unrelenting aggression against the Empire and unwillingness to leave or to consider taking a different strategy? What must have happened for him to become this at such a young age? And maybe that's it. Maybe it's just youth and naivete. I don't know.
I think it is a lot of just youth and naivete, as you were saying. I imagine if Ezra was more rebellious at a younger age, if he didn't have to be convinced of the importance of fighting back against the Empire, I imagine that pre-show Ezra would have been like Mark Matten. I do. I think, as I said before, Ezra sees a lot of himself in them. And I just think when you know better, you do better, and they don't know better, so they don't do better. I think it is that simple. I think that, I know this episode, I gave a lot of grace to this episode for an admittedly dumb reason when I was younger, and that's because this episode was released on my birthday, actually, originally. I remember specifically.
Nice.
But I do think that this episode, I'm not going to argue it's the greatest episode of the show, but I think that there's a lot in this episode that shows exactly how far the Ghost Crew has come, and specifically shows why their strategy and why their discipline is so important. Because without it, you get these guys. Without it, you get people who... There's another example, actually. There's another great example in Andor. I'll try not to spoil it for you, but there's an entire episode where Cassian is just captured by these rebels, by this other group of rebels who just spend the entire episode arguing amongst themselves. They even fight amongst themselves, literally physically fight amongst themselves, because they can't agree on what to fucking do. And they and those rebels remind me a lot about the Iron Squadron, where they just don't know better. In order to get the refined military operation of the Rebel Alliance that we get on Yavin, and that's developing right now as these episodes go on, you have to weed out the youth and inexperience of cells like the Iron Squadron. You just have to. The only way out is through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to be grown through. Absolutely.
Yeah, the as the maneuvers are being made, there's this great moment in another part of the ship where Ezra is chatting with Goody and Johnner, and Goody I think says like, so we should just not fight? Is that what you're saying? And Ezra says, no, I'm saying how we choose to fight is just as important as what we fight for, which
Banger.
is just the thesis statement of the damn show. It's Yoda with Ezra in the temple last season. How Jedi choose to win, the question is. It's a commonality in between Imperial Supercommandos and Iron Squadron is that like Ezra only realizes what's up. Ezra only realizes, like, learns the important lesson when faced with a group that's doing it worse than he is. Fenn Rau only learns what Mandalorian honor is supposed to look like when after being faced with a group that is so perverting it that he sees by contrast.
Interesting.
It's in my mind,
I think
the commonality between these two episodes.
This episode really drives home Ezra's development and Ezra's maturity, where all of a sudden he's not the little kid anymore. He's trying to impart knowledge and impart what he has learned to someone who is behaving a little bit like he did way back in the early days of season 1, maybe a tad.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely.
I love that for him.
One of the things I'm really fascinated by in this episode, I will say, so obviously we get a little appearance, the only one in these 3 episodes, by the Grand Admiral himself, who sends Constantine over to basically make sure that Mart and the Iron Squadron don't get away with doing what they've been doing for the last little while. And I think that's important. Like, the only reason that the strategies and the recklessness that the Iron Squadron had been doing, that had been employing against the Empire, had been working so well, is because of the Empire's stupidity. As soon as you level up the Empire just a little bit, it all falls apart. The only reason they were getting through it, the only reason that, again, honestly, more than Gar Saxon in this case, is a big fish in a small pond. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's rocking this thing against light cruisers.
Yeah.
Not against light cruisers, against just like general, like, I think like just smaller ships.
Yeah, the Gazanti class transport. He says, "You see how I took out that Star Destroyer?" Yeah. Dude, it's not a Star Destroyer. It's a light transport. You know, but how's he supposed to know that? You've never seen a Star Destroyer. He doesn't know how big they actually are.
Yeah, but and he is really good, to his credit, of doing what he's been doing this whole time. But once the challenge increases just a little bit, he's out of his league. He decides to do that stupid ass sacrifice move when there is literally no reason to do so. None. Just no reason. Yeah. I will say that I think that, I'm just looking through my notes, I was reminded Keone Young does not get a ton to do as Jun Sato in this show, just by the nature of Sato's role. But I think that because this episode is personal to Sato because of his nephew, I think Keone Young gets a chance to show a little bit more emotion, and I think that's really striking, and I think he really gets to show that, and I think he does a great job of that in this episode.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, Thrawn comes in just as Constantine is losing to the rebels, yet again, by them doing the cool maneuver with the mine and stuff like that, detaching it with the cargo. I thought that was all a really interesting sequence. I love Chopper and R3-A3 just jetting around. Do you have anything else to say about the Iron Squadron?
No, I love the sinister little exchange between Thrawn and Jun Sato.
Till we meet again.
As Thrawn arrives, right as Jun has rescued his nephew. Yeah, I don't know. What did you ready for overall thoughts on this one, or?
Yeah, no, I think that this episode is good. It's a pretty simple plot. Mostly the Ghost Crew just trying to convince the Iron Squadron to stop being dumbasses, which they succeeded doing for 2 of the 3 of them, and it takes the entire rest of the episode to do it for the other one. But yeah, no, I think this episode's good. I think it's not great, it's good. What are your overall thoughts about this episode?
It was easily my least favorite episode of today. I think I was not particularly moved by the Iron Squadron as characters, and I felt like messaging-wise, character development-wise, this episode just didn't have very much to offer compared to the other two that we watched today, but especially compared to the season as a whole, and especially compared to Imperial Supercommandos.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah. What am I gonna say? Yeah, no, I think Iron Squadron is good. I don't think it's the best of anything. I think that I think it's fine. I like the action in this episode. I like a lot of the dynamics in this episode. Mart, I think, is gonna grow to like. I think I had a little bit more patience for Mart than I normally would have, because I know how far he's going to come in this series. We're going to get to a place where he is he is one of the only survivors on the attack of the TIE fighter factory on Lothal in season 4, and he and Hera are very professional with each other, and he just comes a long way. And so I'm excited to see that development throughout this and next season for Mart Matin, this initial joke character who grew into something much greater. And joke is not the character is a joke, but joke is in the Tuckerization of Matt Martin's name. Anyway, do you want to get on to the Wynkahthu Job?
The Wynkahthu Job, the return of the great Hondo Ohnaka, the return of the not so great as Morrigan. First off, very small detail, but I love Hondo's graffitied out, painted over Imperial shuttle. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Yeah. There are so many great comedic lines in this episode. I'll lead with the positive, what I like about this episode. There's so many great comedic lines in this episode. Of course, the one I go to anytime I impersonate Hondo, my friends, it is I, Hondo. Fantastic. Yeah. And then upon them making plans, Zeb's like, okay, so we get the proton bombs, and then we split the treasure. Split the treasure. Oh, that's a classic. I remember that line delivery. Like, that's the thing I remember from the episode most, is the delivery of split the treasure. That's a classic. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the whole introduction, everything is just phenomenal for Hondo, and
yeah.
No, my big purple friend.
The cut to title, I think, is just for me, a kind of roll your eyes cut to title, but like, whatever.
Yeah.
Of like the reintroduction of Ms. Morgan, and they have to work with him now. Another funny line I have here is, what makes you think we'll succeed when the Empire failed at recovering the ship? And Hondo's like, I know we will succeed, for we desperate.
That's what I wrote down too. But I mean, that's what Hondo and the Rebels have in common that the Empire doesn't.
Yes, and the comedic timing of Jim Cummings is always great as Hondo. I really do think Hondo is one of two things that saves this episode. Hondo and a certain other thing that will show up later in this episode are the things I remember and like most about this episode. Yeah, I just really don't like. This happens with a lot of Hondo episodes. It happened with Brother with Broken Horn. A lot of the Criminal Underworld episodes of this season, they just don't do a whole lot for me. They're just a lot of weird hijinks that the Rebels get into, and it's just kind of like, it's not boring. It's just not very memorable to me. Like, there's just not a lot going on here to me. Like, it's yet another episode. We've been doing more of these as the series has progressed on. Maybe it's a budget thing, I don't know. But like, it's another episode that takes place in the skies of a planet. Maybe Wynkahthu's a gas giant. I don't know. I'll look it up right now. But like, I'm bored of doing it in the skies of a planet. Oh, it was a gas giant. Okay.
We definitely get a lot of that in season 3, I do admit. Like this, the Steps into Shadow, obviously. There's one other one.
We did it in season 2 on Ibar when we briefly got onto that planet.
Oh yeah.
Hell, even Shantipole was kind of a gassy planet, although it has those rocky cliffs.
I disagree. I feel like Shantipole is quite different.
Yeah, Shantipole is different, but Ibar still in that episode. We do it there. We do it in a lot of other places, and like once or twice, fine. But like you start to notice it after a little while, and maybe it was budgetary. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the easiest answer to me of why it's been done so much. Yeah, Hera puts Zeb in charge of the mission. Kanan says, I know what you're doing, but Ezra's got to learn from himself that Hondo is not the friend he appears to be. Honestly, at this point, I feel like Hondo seems to be more of a weak spot for Ezra than Maul. Like,
oh yeah, sure.
It's not that Ezra has bad morals, it's that he's a little too willing to work with, I said, unsavory characters to achieve his goals.
Well, I think it's like Kanan and Hera when they have their little exchange. I believe is it I can't remember which one of them it is, but one of them says, "I wonder." Like they're kind of wondering if he's going to learn in time that Hondo might not be entirely the friend that Ezra thinks he is. So I think it's not even a matter of who he's willing to work with, but with both Maul and him, it's a matter of he can't always see, because of his own experiences and really relative inexperience, he can't always see the way that, Kanan and Hera can, when someone doesn't actually have his best interests at heart.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. We get our first appearance of Melch, the superior Ugnaught in this season, although it's most in this series, although I think it's because we see more of him than Turbo. Belch, I think, goes all the way into season 4, I believe, right? Am I wrong about that?
Well, I don't know when we see him again.
I know there's a moment with him in the finale. I'm almost certain there's a moment with him in the finale that I love, that is just so stupid. And when we get to the Rebels series finale, it's not one of the best parts of the episode, but it's always a fun comedic moment with him and Hondo that I love. Let's see. Melch, I'm looking it up. Yeah, Melch is in season 4. We don't see Melch again until the penultimate episode of season 4.
When does he come back?
In the penultimate episode of season 4.
In what context, though? I don't even...
With Hondo. To help liberate Lothal.
Wow, I didn't even... Wow. Okay. So Okay.
There's a moment from, I believe it's the season finale of Rebels that I love, that I won't spoil, because it deserves to have its moment in the sun when we get to that episode. Yeah, there's another great moment. I love... Again, so many great comedic moments in this episode. That's one thing I will always give this episode, is the comedic moments. Where Ezra's saying something like, so we'll see, it was trying to justify Hondo's actions. We'll see Hondo and his crew were trying to steal from the Empire like we do all the time. Exact, really?
Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic.
That's great. There's a lot of, as far as comedy goes, this episode's got it.
It really does. Then we get to the DT Sentry Droid, which looks a lot like the Legends Dark Trooper, but isn't, of course. We'll get the Legends Dark Trooper fully integrated to canon in The Mandalorian Season 2. I love the design of this droid. Looks so sleek and so menacing. The sound of the clanking feet in the hallway is haunting.
Oh, yeah. Really cool. Is it based on a Legends design or one of the Dark Trooper?
Yep.
They all get mixed up in my mind.
Yeah, it's based off the Dark Trooper design, I believe, in Legends. They're different. From what I remember in Legends, there are different phases of Dark Troopers. So I believe, so like as the Empire tries out different designs, different capabilities, different constructions of the Dark Trooper, whether it's human or robotic, what kind of weaponry it has, all that kind of stuff. But either way, yeah, it's great. Yeah. What else do you got for this episode? Again, I've talked about how the episodes like these kind of fall flat for me often.
Yeah, definitely is a little light on the character development and the messages, I would say, compared to many in this season. So I don't necessarily have a ton to comment on, but yeah, I love all the chase scenes with the Sentry Droids, and I'm really into now one shot when you see all of the Sentry Droids appearing. You're looking down the hallway. they all are appearing from all the side passages, and then the Sentry Droid that we thought as Morgan had killed, quote unquote, kind of rising back up slowly while it's sort of puffing smoke and half on fire, and then Ezra on the other end, we get this huge focal length pull, and Ezra goes, "Uh-oh, this could get ugly." It's a fun episode. And then obviously Melch, the way that he brings himself back from the brink, smuggling himself in the box, like,
yeah,
it's a fun episode. It's a heisty. I love the heist movies, and I feel like this episode is kind of a fun. It's got some of those vibes which I like, but yeah, overall it's not the most insane episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think maybe we wrap here. Any other thoughts about Wynkahthu Job, other than I'll just say it was fine. The criminal episodes are always on the goofier side of for this show, and really not for me. But I'm glad if others like them. Jim Cummings is always charming as Hondo Ohnaka, and there are always some very funny jokes. But this story, aside from the neat addition of the DT Sentry Droids, didn't do a lot for me a whole lot in terms of development, characters, themes, or tones. Oh well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think for me, it's definitely Imperial Supercommandos. I almost said it again. I almost said Super Commanders again. Imperial Supercommandos #1. Definitely Wynkahthu Job #2. It's definitely one of those episodes where I'll say, it's one of those episodes where I like it more than I think it's a great episode.
I think I have that same thing with Iron Squadron.
It has a place in my heart more than it has a place in what I really seriously consider to be the pantheon of truly great or of really good Rebels episodes.
I think I feel the exact same way with Iron Squadron. Like, I think I think I probably like it more than it's a good episode.
Yeah. And I think I feel the same way about Iron Squadron that you do about this one. I'm just like I can see what they're going for, but for me personally, kind of a non-starter on most fronts.
Yeah.
Although I didn't not to say that I really disliked it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I don't dislike the Wynkahthu Job. I just kind of roll my eyes at it sometimes. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. We hope you enjoyed our bracket stream. We had a really great time with Andrew, Connor, and M doing that, and we look forward to doing more of those in the future. Next week, Jacob and I will be discussing the next 2 episodes of Rebels and Inside Man and Visions and Voices. Until then, you can listen to us on every platform. If you haven't watched the bracket stream, you can do so on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there so you never miss any future In a Galaxy and Star Wars in a Galaxy Epic Confrontations videos, which, by the way, hope you enjoyed that new match, Nikki versus Jerry, very fun match. You can follow me. You can follow every In a Galaxy on Blue Sky at inagalaxypod.bsky.social. You can follow it on Instagram at inagalaxypod. You can follow me everywhere. My link tree is linktr.ee/_ochiman327. And I think until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.
All right. Whew.